guys, welcome to the channel Trickle Down Philosophy, formerly known as Thinking Theology, but this is a philosophy channel, always has been. It just touches on theological topics, atheistic topics, anything to engender thought, presumably, and hopefully amiable conversation. That said, I just came across this video of Richard Dawkins on the LBC. I assume that's the London Broadcasting Corporation or something, rather than the BBC, but he's talking about being a cultural Christian. And I watched about 30 seconds of this, and I was kind of astounded, but it makes sense. But I said, I got to bring this to you guys, and I'll watch the bulk of this video for the first time on camera and then share some of my own thoughts as they may be appropriate. All right, here we go.
Professor Dawkins, it's very good to have you join us to discuss whether it matters that Christianity is playing a diminishing role in national life. Welcome to LBC.
Thank you.
And what would be your Easter message? I've said a few things. What would you tell the nation?
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more,
Wow.
Are being planned. So do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that matters?
Yes, I do, really. I mean, I might choose my words carefully. I mean, if I had to choose between Christianity and Islam, I choose Christianity every single time. I mean, it seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion, in a way that I think Islam is not.
I think you're going to have to explain why you say that, Professor Dawkins. Why is Islam fundamentally not decent like Christianity?
Yes, I mean, the way women are treated. I mean, Christianity is not great about that. It's had its problems with female vicars and female bishops and things. But there's an active hostility to women, which is promoted, I think, by the holy books of Islam. I'm not talking about individual Muslims, who, of course, are quite different. But the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran, is fundamentally hostile to women, hostile to gays, and I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single word of the Christian faith.
Just for balance, should we say something about fundamentalist Christians who, we can see abortion rights, reproductive rights being rolled back in Republican states in America. So Christianity is still not without its problems when it comes to women and their rights.
Well, you didn't ask me about Christianity in America. That's a different matter entirely.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure we got some fundamentalist Christians here too, but not as public.
Well, insofar as fundamentalist Christians oppose evolution and think that the world was created 6,000 years ago, I mean, that is pernicious nonsense, of course.
Right. Well, so I think I see where you come from. I like the phrase, you're a cultural Christian. I think I'm a bit more than a cultural Christian, although, it does, my belief waxes and wanes. Would it be a good thing or a bad thing if we became a less Christian country? And just on the foundation of this nation, with the king being the head of church and state.
I'm so glad I came across this. I'm absolutely intrigued by this, and I like the phrase cultural Christian as well. But I'm just astounded, going to catch my breath for a second, at this new perspective of Dawkins by Dawkins.
Do you think it provides a solid foundation we would lose something if, let's say, there was a Muslim majority?
Well, yes. I think the king, when he was Prince of Wales, was actually rather sympathetic towards Islam, and one of the problems I felt. No, I think it would be a terrible thing. And insofar as Christianity can be seen as a bulwark against Islam, I think it's a very good thing. I mean, in Africa, for example, where you have missionaries of both faiths operating, I'm on Team Christian side as far as that's concerned.
It's interesting because I sort of thought that you would be more of a Hitchinite, God is not great advocate. But it's interesting to me that you see the value and the force for good of.
Well,
I think he's saying it's a lesser of two evils, and the one, Islam versus Christianity. That's one of the things he's saying. But the other part is that I guess when you grow up in a certain culture that is more based on a certain notion of equality and so forth, and he prefers basking in the light of that, but not the doctrines themselves. But it can be difficult to separate the origins from the effect. It can be done in some contexts. He does believe, if you were to ask somebody, like ask Dawkins, for example, he said he doesn't believe a single word of the texts. Okay, there's a lot in those texts. Now, I'm not a big fan of the text being the word of God, though I used to believe that until I did extensive research and I found something in there, a lot in there that I did not want to find. But there are things in there that, like a soft answer turns away wrath or turns away anger. Well, it generally does. Turns away your own. If you're trying to give a soft response, it kind of makes you calm down to give it, but it also can disarm the other person, for example. So there are some very good things in the text themselves. So I don't think he would say, no, I don't believe that. But he would say, I don't believe that they came from God. They came from people, and they just made observations of what works among people. And so they're basically lay sociologists in that regard. He'd probably agree with some sense of that.
The United Kingdom having a Christian foundation.
Yes, but I must emphasize that I think that the things that Christians believe are actually nonsense. I mean, I think that when you say you waver, I wanted to ask you, do you actually believe that Jesus had a virgin for a mother? Do you actually believe he rose from the dead? I suspect
well,
you probably
weirdly,
don't.
since you asked, Richard, if I may, because I was at New College when you were. I think, are you still a don at New College? Yes.
Well, I'm retired.
You're retired, but you don't look anyway. Weirdly, I was just 3 weeks ago at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, where
I've been there.
The Christians believe that Christ was crucified, or there was the tomb, and the Gethsemane was just there, and Golgotha was there.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that there is a real force. I mean, it feels like the fulcrum of three world religions. It really does. And Christianity is palpable there. The place pulses with Christianity. I don't know whether it made me believe the Bible anymore, but I certainly felt that Jesus was a historical figure. Yes, I did believe that.
Well,
am I wrong to think that?
No. I mean, that's quite different. But do you believe that his mother was a virgin?
Well, I mean, maybe that was a mistranslation of. Well, that's biologically impossible, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yes.
Well, I mean, I used to make a joke that most second children are virgin births because you can. Anyway, we don't want to go into that. Yes. But yes, you know what I'm saying. Were you pleased that Rishi Sunak talked about Christian values in his? He said Christian values are British values in his Easter message. You seem to be on the same page.
Yes, I didn't hear that, but
that's what he said.
Yes, I suppose so. But I don't want to be misunderstood. I mean, I do think it's nonsense. But the Christian belief. I mean, today is Easter, and of course, I don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead, and I don't believe you do either. Do you?
Do I believe that Jesus rose from the dead? Well, I mean, you're really putting me on the spot. I would like to believe he did. Yes, I mentioned the
that's different.
resurrection. I mentioned the resurrection. By the way, just quickly, because I've been told we've got to stop. When my son was 2, we took him to church, and the priest said, "You can ask me anything." And he said that my 2-year-old son asked the priest, "Do you know Jesus to be true, or do you believe Jesus to be true?" And do you see what I mean? And he couldn't answer that question.
Well, it's an epistemological question. It gets into theories of knowledge, which is what epistemology is. And that's why trickle-down philosophy, I have a healthy dose of that and respect. I'm not even a devotee of it. It just makes sense that there is a huge difference between what we call knowledge and what we call belief. Regardless of what we observe in science, it still is all a matter of belief. Regardless of what you believe about the texts or think you know about the sacred text, the New Testament, the Hebrew Bible, it's still a matter of belief. No matter how much in agreement you think the texts are with one another, it's still a matter of belief. To say, I know that the next swan is going to be white because I've observed 10 million white ones already is stepping outside the knowledge. You could say, I strongly believe that the next one I see is going to be white because all the ones I've seen are white. But all it takes is one gray, red, black, blue swan, and your entire idea is wrong. So you have the disadvantage of negative evidence, if you will, working against what your particular belief is. And the same thing applies to physics. The same thing applies to the speed of light. If we find something traveling that has mass that's traveling faster than the speed of light, physics is in a crisis, and we have to rework all those theories. So she's saying that her son asked the priest, do you know or do you believe? And that is such a fundamental difference. If we couch things and say, I believe X, Y, and Z, regardless of what you believe, that is unassailable. Nobody can say, no, you don't. They can say it, but it's when you say, I know these certain things to be true, that you run into difficulty. You can say, I think certain things are incredibly reliable. Like when I drop this ball, it's going to go down. And yes, that is very reliable because observation and experience has shown you that. But there could come a day when the physics in the universe become different. And not likely to happen in our lifetime, but I love this question. I want to see how Dawkins answers it now.
Himself. Anyway,
Yes.
or God. Anyway, listen, lastly, just one thing. Does it matter? I'm going to ask you again. If Christianity is a minority religion in this country?
Clearly, he said that.
I think it matters from a cultural point of view.
That's a very clear answer from you, Richard Dawkins. Thank you so much for joining us from, I look like New College, but Richard Dawkins, Prof. Dawkins, is the renowned evolutionary biologist, author of The God Delusion.
Okay. Well, I love that. That's one of the joys of doing this channel is discovering all these new things. And it's just fun to learn. It just is. I mean, I hadn't even thought of cultural Christian as being not a classification, but it's very well put. That sort of describes certain folks, and that Dawkins himself said it. So I know there were people, when the name of the channel was Thinking Theology, and this is only the second video I've done with the new channel name, Trickle Down Philosophy, because I really do take a philosophical look at things. Dispassionate in ways, excited at some things, but when I say dispassionate, it means I don't care whether you believe in God or don't believe in God. That doesn't faze me. But Dawkins is clearly thinking theology. He's not establishing it. He's not agreeing with it clearly, but it's the product of thought. To refute something, you've got to be thinking it. But I just decided that I was going to go in a different direction and keep it more of a philosophical, the name of the channel, thus not giving people misapprehension about what my intentions and joys are on the channel. I'll talk about virtually any ideas and see if they make sense. And Dawkins presented himself here fairly consistently. And it's what he believes. Who can assail that? You don't have to agree with it, but he stated it. So, all right, guys, please subscribe if you haven't already. That would be wonderful. Have a great day. I'll see you on another video of Trickle Down Philosophy.